Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. I hope everybody had a great weekend. Hope you had some much needed time off. Today, we're going to cover all the major stories from around the world of sports, including Tyreek Hill signing a new contract. We'll take a look at the wide receiver market, where it stands now after his new contract signed. We'll take a look at some Olympic updates as some craziness has been going on. We're just over halfway done with the Olympics now. We'll take a look at some of the big storylines from all around Team USA, and then we're going to take a look at, of course, the Dolphins. We're continuing our series of every single NFL team. We're taking a look at the Dolphins today, and as the title says, we're gonna figure out how historically bad this Chicago White Sox team is. But before we get into all of that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to GSMCPodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments, throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday afternoon. But like I was saying, we're going to start off our show here today with a quick look at the wide receiver market. Tyreek Hill signs a new mega deal with the Dolphins. It doesn't add more years, as he said he was going to retire at the end of his contract. All it does is add more money. Previously, he was making $30 million a year. Now he is the highest paid receiver in the league, making over $40 million. It's it's a huge deal for the Dolphins, and we'll talk a little bit more about their offseason, but they've paid a lot of guys. They had to let a lot of guys walk, but Tyreek Hill goes from the fourth highest paid receiver, passing all the guys that passed him this offseason, including Amon-Ra St. Brown, A.J. Brown, and Justin Jefferson. We'll take a look at this wide receiver market as a whole, because as we've talked about, it's kind of exploded a lot this offseason. And Tyreek Hill is one of the most explosive players in football. He absolutely deserves this contract. And the Dolphins, they gave up the world to get him. He obviously was fighting to get to 2,000 receiving yards last year. That's something that is in the back burner. It's definitely a goal for him this season. We'll see if they can get that for him this year. But there's been a lot of wide receiver deals signed this offseason. Starting from the top, Justin Jefferson with the Vikings. Obviously, Tyreek Hill signs this massive contract. And you have to ask the question, outside of quarterback, is wide receiver the biggest position you should be paying, right? Justin Jefferson absolutely deserves his $35 million. We still have guys like CeeDee Lamb waiting on the back burner to get paid. That will happen sooner rather than later, I do believe. A.J. Brown signed a massive contract. Both him and his teammate, who we'll get to in a little bit, signed massive contracts this offseason. A.J. Brown signing for $32 million. Amon-Ra St. Brown signing for $30 million with the Lions. We talked about them very recently. And then you have, DJ Moore, who just signed his contract, which is a really good contract for a guy like DJ Moore. The Bears were able to get a top-tier receiver in DJ Moore without having to break the bank. Now, paying a guy $110 million is not cheap. But when you're taking a look and you're comparing it to some of the other contracts that we're giving out this offseason, some of the ones that we've gone over already, with how much the wide receiver market has exploded, this was a steal of a deal for them, right? They obviously are just starting to be competitive, but keeping DJ Moore out of the top five, keeping him under all the guys that signed contracts this offseason, or most of the guys that signed contracts this offseason, is huge. You also the other guys that signed contracts this offseason that are below him, Devonta Smith, the other Eagle teammate of AJ Brown, he got his bag, $25 million a year. Nico Collins got 24. Michael Pittman got his franchise tag. Calvin Ridley got his free agent deal. Stephon Diggs traded. T. Higgins got his franchise tag. Mike Evans got his deal. Keenan Allen with the Bears. The Bears are paying a lot of money to receiver right now. And when we're looking at teams that are investing a lot in the position, right? We're looking at teams like the Bears here that have all this money. The Bears and the Dolphins have the most money tied up in receivers, and the Eagles as well, right? Those are teams that build this great wide receiver core. They're sacrificing elsewhere, right? Obviously, the Bears don't have to worry about this yet because they still haven't paid their quarterback. They just drafted their quarterback this season. The Eagles are working through it. They paid Jalen Hurts already. Now they're just trying to keep the band together. They're where they're suffering though is on the defense, especially the secondary. So there is this trade-off that's given, and they have to decide whether or not the wide receiver, the offense, the amount that they're paying the offense is worth it. Obviously, the Bucs pay a lot of money, but they don't have that top-tier quarterback contract that they have to give out. But now we look at the Dolphins, and we'll get into the Dolphins a little more because we're doing our season preview for them today with the NFL season just around the corner. Very excited for that. We've had lots of joint practices already starting. The Giants and the Lions got into a bunch of fights, including GM Joe Shane in the middle of a fight, Daniel Jones in the middle of a fight. It was pandemonium out there today. But with the evolution of this wide receiver market, they need to think about, NFL teams need to think about, and we talked about this with the quarterback market. Now, guys like Patrick Mahomes are getting paid a lot of money and winning Super Bowls, but that can sometimes be the outlier. There's always going to be an outlier, and if there ever was a outlier, it's Patrick Mahomes with the Chiefs, right? Excuse me. It's a little. I'm trying to figure out where this cap comes in, right? Because Tyreek Hill signs this big deal, and he doesn't. What's more interesting to me with his deal is the fact that he doesn't get more years added onto it, right? Tyreek Hill said earlier, a couple years last year, I do believe. Excuse me. I apologize. Give me. All right. Sorry about that. Tyreek Hill said earlier this offseason that he was not going to that he was going to retire at the end of his contract. He signs this deal. All it does is give him more money yearly, right? And the Dolphins are just re-upping him after the season that he just had. He's second he's the second favorite to be the offensive player of the year. So this is a guy that is well within his right to go and get that money from the Dolphins. This is a contract that I think is worth it for both ends. It only goes until 2026. If you're going to keep him around, you might as well keep him happy. You've already paid Tua. Your defense could use some work. And like I said, we'll get into all of that later. But for now, I apologize. Excuse me. But for now, the Dolphins just need to focus on, being competitive. And we'll break down a lot more about the Dolphins later. But Tyreek Hill signs a new massive deal. In our next segment, we are going to get into the Olympics a little bit. Lots of craziness. We're going to go over the major stories from the U.S. Olympics, including rivalries, Noah Lyles' situation, and we're going to touch a little bit on the boxing situation throughout the Olympics. So stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Feel like I'm losing my mind. Everybody in the world gone. Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Everybody in the world gone. Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. Look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day on this fake shit. Hoping one day I blow up in basement. Statement. The top is so vacant. I'm in this shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing. Sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that smile. Get in my way to be put down. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished talking about Tyreek Hill getting a massive contract from the Dolphins. Not a contract extension, just more money on his deal from the Miami Dolphins. In this segment, we are going to get into the Olympics a little bit before getting into our question about the White Sox. But before we do that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments, throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday afternoon. But like I was saying, in this segment here, we're going to do a little bit of a breakdown of the first half of the Olympics. Nice, easy way, and it's not perfect to do it. What I like to think about from front half and back half of the Olympics as far as the overarching theme is the pool to the track. And that's where we're going to start. We're going to start off in the pool here. And the big story in the pool, at least here in America, has been the pseudo rivalry or rivalry between the US and Australia, especially in the pool over the last couple. I won't say last couple, over the last like 20 years of the Olympics, the last 5 or 6 of them, it's always been 1-2 between the US and the Olympics, but between the US and Australia. And for the first time in a long time, it seemed like Australia was going to pull ahead of the US. The US, really all Olympics until very recently, has kind of been the king of the silver medal. They were winning the medal counts, but they weren't winning the gold medal count. Yesterday, they tied it up with China for the gold medal counts. But just in the pool, France started off strong. The U.S. was getting a whole lot of silvers in the pool. Excuse me. But they ended up falling 7-2 in the gold medal count before the last couple days in the pool. Australia had a nice lead in the last stretch of events. The U.S. comes all the way back, ends up having more gold medals at the end of the pool session, 8-7 than Australia does, finishing it off with a exclamation point with a world record in the 4x100 women's medley, where we set a new world record. It's crazy. I feel like this Olympics didn't have too many world records being set, and then all of a sudden they all came in droves. We had a whole bunch being set on the track in qualifying. We'll talk about the track here in a second. One of the bigger stories here in the US, and one that I don't really understand, or one that I understand but kind of have a little bit of a problem with, is the whole Noah Lyles situation with the US basketball team. And obviously, if you're unaware, I'll break down that situation for you here real quick. A couple years ago, I believe this was 2021, Noah Lyles comes out in an interview and says, I'm paraphrasing here, the NBA isn't champions of the world. They shouldn't call themselves champions of the world. We're champions of the world here in track. They just play in America. They're champions of America, right? And that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. When I was listening to his statements, when I watched that, I kind of read it as I don't really think he meant it like that. But, sometimes athletes, media, people, the public, just kind of take the comments and run wild with it. And a lot of people are crediting him with the U.S. putting together this super team for basketball. I do think there was a lot of different factors to go along with that, including the fact that the rest of the world had gotten better. But I do think this lit a fire under a lot of guys. And I think that's honestly a good thing. I think the reason I think the fact that the US hadn't been sending its best to the Olympics, and you can tell, by the fact how much excitement there was around this US Olympic team. The fact that they hadn't been sending their best to the Olympics kind of was disappointing. Noah Lyles says this. He kind of lights a fire under them. LeBron puts this whole team together, and we get to see this last hurrah of sorts with LeBron and KD and Steph all on the same team. You get to see the past, the present, and the future of the NBA all together. Anthony Edwards is balling out. Bam Adebayo, Anthony Davis, all these guys on this team come together. They put together a super team. It's super exciting to see. It really is. This is what we've been waiting for basketball in the US for a very, very long time. It's one of those things that when you're watching the Olympics, you kind of say, "Hey, this isn't our best." And generally they haven't needed the best, but the world is starting to catch up. And we'll talk a little bit about the bracket for the basketball when we get further in, but it's set. The group stage is done. The 3-on-3 is still bad. We talked about that a couple days ago. But Noah Lyles comes in, says that a couple years ago, lights a fire under everyone, and now everyone is hate watching his events. And that is something that I can't get behind. Look, I understand he said some stuff riled up the NBA community, but the fact of the matter is, this is like the least patriotic thing you could do here, right? This is the Olympics. We're here to cheer on and support our country. The whole men's team was in attendance for Noah Lyles' 100-meter race, which was crazy, by the way. It was one of the closest races that I have ever seen. And Noah Lyles ends up winning by thousandths of seconds, just because he leaned. The fundamentals of racing there. You gotta lean. Some people are mad about him winning because a couple of other athletes, I believe two other athletes, if you look at the photo finish, had their feet across the finish line. But in racing, it's always been the head. It's always been that's why they teach you to lean when you're practicing racing. When you're doing these races, they always teach you to lean at the finish line. You've seen all these crazy finishes of the past of people literally diving across the line. Some people fall, get the gold because they fall at the last second. But all these photo finishes, people are calling for rule changes. Noah Lyles gets his gold medal, as slim of a margin as you can possibly give. He is the fastest man in the world, so congratulations to him. The U.S. continues to dominate as we hit this back half of the Olympics. And the last thing that I wanted to touch on here in the Olympics, and we'll do more Olympic coverage as the season as the Olympics go on here, and as we reach a climax in the Olympic Games here in France. But one of the bigger stories, and I'm going to be very careful here because I know this could have some issues. Boxing has always been an event in the Olympics, right? There's a couple of female boxers here who, some people are claiming are transgender. Now that is not true. They've done tests, they've done studies, they've done lots of different gender tests, come back on it. The Olympics have said, hey, they are not allowed. The Olympics have said, hey, they are female. The country that these boxers are from, it's illegal to be transgender in. But there's still some controversy here, and this all stems from a qualifying boxing match where this boxer basically one punches another boxer from Italy. Right? She takes one punch, withdraws from the match, says that's the hardest she's ever been punched. She doesn't claim anything about her being a man. That comes from the outside. I just think it's ridiculous that people are refusing to see all of these facts. and believe what you want to believe. I'm not gonna come on here and say anything, but this is just kind of ridiculous at this point. And that's all I really wanted to say on that. I feel like at this point, if you still refuse to believe, you're just covering your ears to everything and blindly just believing what you want to believe to be true. And that's not how it works. But anyway, we're going to take a quick break here. And then we're going to transition into the world of baseball. We're going to talk about the White Sox. The Chicago White Sox are currently on a 20-game losing streak. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about how historically bad they could be, how historically bad they are, and if they are the worst team in the history of the MLB. So stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube. Absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished talking all about the craziness that has been going on in the Olympics so far as the U.S. gets back on top of the medal count, both in golds and in total medals. We also talked a little bit about Tyreek Hill and his contract, where the wide receiver market is currently sitting at in the NFL. In this segment, we're going to talk about the White Sox. The Chicago White Sox are currently on a 20-game losing streak, something that's only been done 4 times in the history of modern baseball. We'll talk about how this is an historic losing streak, where this puts them in the halls of all-time worst baseball teams, if they could beat the record for the worst baseball team ever, held by the 1899 Cleveland Spiders. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to get into the Chicago White Sox here. The Chicago White Sox have been dreadfully bad this season. The Chicago White Sox are on pace currently to lose almost 130 baseball games. They lost their 20th game in a row yesterday. They're 60 games under 500 at 27-87. This is ridiculous. For context, there's 2 records that they're currently chasing, or trying to avoid beating, I would say, as far as total record for the end of the season. And if you want to read more about this, there was a great article on The Athletic that came out today by Jason Stark to go check out. He breaks all of this down very nicely. There's a couple records that they're chasing all time. Obviously, they break this down since baseball's been going on forever. And it's hard to compare, the 1880s to today. That game is just completely different from any other kind of record that there would, and any other kind of sport that is happening right now. But there's 2 ways of breaking this down. In the modern era, the worst team ever is the 1962 New York Mets. They finished with a horrendous record of 120 losses. 120 losses for those Mets. The worst team ever. Ever. In the history of baseball is those 1899 Cleveland Spiders. The Cleveland Spiders are just a comedy of errors when it comes to baseball teams, right? They got kicked out of their home stadium. They got, they went 50 and 60. They went 5-60 in their last 65 games. They lost 135. They lost 134 games in 1899. And if the White Sox lose every single game for the rest of this season, if they lose every single game for the rest of this year, the Chicago White Sox will be the new, not so proud owner of the worst record in the history of baseball, losing 135 games. Now, that would be if they lose every single game. A much more attainable loss record, I would say, is that New York Mets record of 120. Right now, they are on pace for about 122 losses this season, which is ridiculous. They've only won 27 games, and I want to point to where they're at currently. They are 60 games under 500. This is the fastest that has ever happened. They were 57 games under 500 entering August. The only other time that has happened is those famed 1899 Cleveland Spiders, right? This is a White Sox team that just has nothing going for it. They didn't even trade away everyone. Eric Fetty, they traded, he was a solid piece for them. This is a team that doesn't have much. They traded away Eloy Jimenez, who is starting off really nicely in Baltimore. 6 for 8 in his first couple games, couple RBIs, couple hits here and there. A nice resurgence for Eloy Jimenez after leaving Chicago. But as for the players in Chicago, you've got Garrett Crochet, you've got Luis Robert. It hasn't mattered. The White Sox have lost 20 straight games. They've won 20 games. They've almost lost as many games in a row now as they've won all season long. This is not where you want to be as a franchise. And there really isn't a lot of silver lining here, right? They are about to pass or tie, maybe, the Orioles record for the longest losing streak in AL history. The Orioles had it at 21 games, a streak that was broken when the Orioles beat the White Sox, right? This is still a crazy losing streak. And this has been a season, I guess a sports calendar year of a lot of crazy losing streaks. You think back to the NBA season this year, the Pistons lost 28 straight games, right? 27 straight games. They were, the worst. They were going to break the worst losing streak in the history of baseball, right? Soon after, the Wizards challenged them for that. This is the time in sports where you have the highest of highs. You have the Yankees, the Phillies, who are struggling a little bit, but you have a team. You have those teams who, are really that bad. And teams that are really that good, the Dodgers over there, and it's a real dichotomy between it. But what the White Sox are putting on is kind of a comic. Is kind of comically bad, right? The 1988 Orioles right now is the AL streak for losses at 21. The longest losing streak is the 61 Phillies. And, there's a real chance at 26 games, and there's a real chance that gets broken, right? They are on pace, like I said, to lose more games than the 62 Mets. It's ridiculous. Even in their own city, the football team has won more games than they have in the last month. The Chicago Bears won a preseason game that only went 3 quarters. They've won more games in the last 25 days than the Chicago White Sox have. It is ridiculous what the White Sox are going through right now. And the question to be answered is are the White Sox the worst team in the history of baseball? No, Yes. I'm going to go with yes here, right? Now, the history of baseball is long, and that goes back to, again, these 1899 Cleveland Spiders. I don't think they're that bad. In terms of modern baseball, yes, I think this is the worst team in the history of baseball. This is a team that just a couple years ago seemed like it had a bright future. They had a reigning MVP in 2020. They had a lot of young talent that was rising up, and now it's all gone. All of it. There's no remnants of just 4 years ago this White Sox team was, a sneaky World Series candidate in that shortened 2020 season. And now they're the worst team in the history of baseball. It really is sad, and it shows how much things can change in baseball, how quickly things can change in baseball. So maybe 2 years from now, the White Sox are back. I doubt it, but maybe they are. Right now, they are the worst team in baseball, maybe the worst team in the history of baseball. And right now, we just have to sit back, relax, and see how long this ride takes. See how far the White Sox can push it. I'm curious to see if they lose more games in a row than they currently have wins. 27-20. It's not undoable. The one thing is they get a little bit of an easy schedule right now. Their next series coming up that kicks off today is against the Oakland Athletics. The Athletics, who are fine, but they're not great. A 3-game series. Then they go the crosstown rivals against the Chicago Cubs, who are up and down. That's 5 games right there. If they lose all 5 of those, they get the Yankees, and they get the Yankees for 3 games. And while that is something that the Yankees are absolutely prone to blowing a losing streak like that, I think the real threat is the Athletics. They are in Oakland, right? The White Sox tonight are currently the Athletics are probably their biggest favorites of the whole season. Minus 200 favorites on the money line. The White Sox are pitching Kai Busch tonight, who hasn't started all season long. But it is the A's, so we'll see. We'll keep an eye on this story. See if they break the AL record for losses in a row. See if they break the all-time record for losses in a row. If they can get through the Yankees, that is going to be a new record. After that is the Astros. And I think really the issue comes, and there's not really baseball is baseball. So anything can happen any given night. There's a reason they play 162 games. But looking at it, if they get swept by the Athletics here in this 3-game series, you then get the Cubs, who are kind of fighting for a playoff spot. You have the Yankees, who are fighting for the best record in the AL. You have the Astros, who are fighting for a division. The Giants, who are also kind of fighting for a playoff spot. And then the Tigers, who are not really fighting for a playoff spot, but that is a lot of time to wait. It's a lot of time to wait. It doesn't get very easy throughout all of August. So we'll have to see what happens. We'll keep an eye out. We'll keep it updated for you. But anyway, we're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we're going to take a look at the Miami Dolphins. We are making our way through every single MLB team, not MLB, every single NFL team. We're going to take a look at the Dolphins offseason. We're going to take a look at their upcoming schedule, see what record I have them doing, if they're going to make the playoffs, if they'll improve after giving out all these massive contracts, letting a couple of important guys walk. So stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you were just tuning in, we just finished talking about the Chicago White Sox, who are currently on the worst stretch of baseball in their history after having the worst stretch of baseball in their history already earlier this season with a 14-game losing streak, now up to 20, looking to break that tonight against the Athletics. Well, in this segment, we're going to talk a little bit about the Miami Dolphins. We're continuing our series talking about every single NFL team, giving them a preview of their upcoming NFL season, a review of their offseason, giving them a grade. We're going to give the Dolphins an offseason grade in this segment. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to get into the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins, who have had a very interesting offseason. At the beginning of it, you could sit here and tell me, hey, they have been kind of cheap this offseason, right? You take a look at this Miami Dolphins team that felt like they were kind of close to a Super Bowl last year, felt like they were kind of close to being contenders. Obviously, that offense was electric. They kind of fell off down the stretch of the season, half because of injuries, half because of play. I think maybe a little more because of injuries than play. I feel like half is a little unfair there, but this is a Dolphins team that is really good, right? And what they did this offseason is interesting, right? They let a lot of their guys walk, especially defensively. Letting guys like Christian Wilkins go, letting guys like Robert Hunt go, letting guys, those two signed huge, massive contracts. Robert Hunt is a huge part of that offensive line, an offensive line that's very important to what they need to be successful, right? This is a Dolphins team whose biggest concern heading into last season was the health of their quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa, right? And now they're letting the offensive line get weaker, putting Tua back in a situation where he might get hurt again, and that would throw their season completely under the bus. Christian Wilkins is one of the best defensive tackles in the league. He's a big space eater, he's fast, he's athletic, and he knows how to rush the quarterback. The Raiders go out and grab him. That is a huge get for them. Also losing other parts of the defense that really sucks. The linebacker core especially is going to get stripped, losing Jerome Baker, who I really loved, Andrew Van Ginkel, who I really loved, and the corners, Xavier Howard, who was up, hasn't been the same since he got hurt, but still shows flashes of that special corner that he was when he signed his massive contract, is gone as well. Now, you still do have Jalen Ramsey at the other corner, and you went out and you added guys like Kendall Fuller to go and fix that, but the pass rush is going to be a lot weaker, losing guys like Christian Wilkins, like Andrew Van Ginkel, like Jerome Baker. You are going to get, you are going to get guys like Jalen Phillips back, who before his torn ACL was being talked about as one of the best pass rushers in the league, which I think is a little much right now. But you're also going to get Bradley Chubb back. That pass rush is going to get better. If this defense can stay healthy, it's solid, right? Their draft class wasn't the greatest. They went out in their first round and drafted Chop Robinson out of Penn State. I didn't love him. He's athletic. He's got great bend, but he easily gets out muscled. And if he's getting out muscled in college, I can't really imagine how badly he's going to get out muscled in the NFL unless he's really able to put on weight like that and really get in the weight room and try and fix that. So this wasn't a very special draft class, but like I said, they started being a little cheap. They go out and they start spending recently. They give Tua a massive contract, $53.1 million a year. They give Tyreek Hill a massive contract over the weekend, not an extension, but just, more money to keep him happy, keep him there, your number one weapon, your big speed guy. And this is a team that has the offensive engine. The question is, did they improve? And it's hard to judge this Dolphins team because they left a bad taste in your mouth. The beginning of their season was great. And it's also hard to judge this Dolphins team because they were great against bad teams. They weren't great against good teams. And, they really started to falter down the end of the season when they started to play a harder schedule, and also when injuries started piling up at the same time. So it's hard for me to sit here and say, hey, this is a Dolphins team that cannot play good teams. This is a Dolphins team, or to sit here and say, hey, this is a Dolphin team that looks like they can't play bad teams because of the injuries that they suffered last season. This is a it's a tough team to take a look at. I'm a little higher on the Dolphins than I think a lot of people are. Right now, their Vegas win total is set to 9.5. The Bills was at 10.5, and I was lower on the Bills than a lot of people were. Excuse me. But if they can stay healthy, I think this team is going to be really good. I think their offseason, while they did lose a lot of headliners, and the loss of and having Shaq Barrett retire does not help. He was expected to really help that pass rush out, but they have a lot of weapons in the pass rush, right? This is a team that I do believe can still be really good, and I do believe in Mike McDaniel and his offense. I'm just not sure if this is a Super Bowl level team or not. The offseason, as far as this offseason goes, I'm going to give them a C, a solid C. I didn't love their draft, and I think I could have bumped this up if they had a good draft. I think their acquisitions, they got cheaper, and I think that's a good thing. Adding a guy like Kendall Fuller at corner, Jonnu Smith, they needed a nice tight end that could, play that could block and catch. They didn't really have that last season. Odell Beckham Jr. comes in. I'm not sure how healthy he's going to be, but he's not going to be your big offensive weapon. So having him as a wide receiver 3, I think, is fine. The offensive line takes a big hit, and that's where they lose the most amount of points, right? This is an offensive line that went from having some of the best interior guys to Isaiah Wynn, Aaron Brewer, and Robert Jones on the inside. Now, they still have Teron Armstead, who is awesome, right? But he's not enough for this offensive line, to be completely honest with you. This is a team that this is a boomer bust team. As we saw with the Mike McDaniel team last year, it's a boomer bust team, and I don't expect that to change. We'll take a look at their schedule. I'm giving them a C. We're going to take a quick break here, come back, take a look at their schedule, see what we can give them as far as a record going. Again, their Vegas line is set to 9.5. We'll see if I have an over or an under here. So stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you were just tuning in, we just went over the Dolphins and their offseason. I gave them an offseason grade of a C. I think the overpay of Tua is a big part of this. Their draft wasn't great, but they did a good job getting cheaper and basically staying the same outside of the offensive line, which I think might cause some trouble. So I gave them a C here. Not great, not awful either. In this segment, we're going to go over the Dolphins. We're going to go over the Dolphins' schedule. We're going to give them a record, see if they'll get past that 9.5 win total that is set for them by Vegas. See if I have them in the playoffs. So stick around for that. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. Appreciate everybody for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to get into the Miami Dolphins and their schedule prediction. So this is an interesting Miami Dolphins schedule, right? This is not a super tough schedule. They have their bye week in week 6. But all of their tough opponents, I won't say all, but most of their tough opponents outside of division are tucked at the very end of their schedule. The beginning of their schedule, they only play one playoff team from last season, all the way up until week 12. They only play 3 games against teams that made the playoffs last year, and 2 of those are against the Bills in their division, right? They get the Bills twice and the Rams. So through week 12, they're only playing kind of bad teams. Then week 13 on through week 18, all but 2 of those games are against teams that made the playoffs. And the 2 games that are the teams that didn't make the playoffs are the Jets that now have Aaron Rodgers. So you can kind of throw them in that same conversation. So week 1 to 12, you play 3 games against playoff teams. And weeks 13 to 18, you play 4 out of 6. So this is a packed schedule at the end. That means the Dolphins need to start off strong if they want to make a difference in this AFC race. An AFC race that if they don't win this division, which is a tough division, it is not easy to make this wild card. This is a stacked AFC. We've talked about that a lot. There's only a couple of teams that I can sit here and say comfortably, I know for a fact will not make the playoffs. Handful, less than 4 of them, I can sit here and say we're 100% certain that they are not going to make the playoffs. So starting off here with the Dolphins in week 1. They take on the Jaguars. The Jaguars are a team that just paid Trevor Lawrence, right? Trevor Lawrence is a quarterback I really believe in, but I think this is a Dolphins team that is going to be back and healthy, and I think they'll be able to take care of business against the Jaguars in week 1. Starting off strong, week 2 against the Bills. This is another tough opponent, Josh Allen. That's in Miami. I think because it's in Miami, we're going to give a win to the Dolphins here as well. Excuse me. As we turn the corner to week 3, the Dolphins head all the way up to Seattle to take on the Seahawks. The Seahawks who I think are going to be kind of a litmus test for a lot of teams. I think they'll beat the bad teams, beat the bad teams, lose to the good teams. I'm giving the Dolphins the benefit of the doubt here, having the Seahawks lose here in week 3. They start off strong, 3-0. Then they head over to the Titans, and Will Levis, at that point, DeAndre Hopkins will be back. Will Levis showed a lot of flashes. Obviously, last year in this matchup, the Titans came back from down 14 with just about 2 minutes to go, end up beating the Dolphins and kind of sending their season into a downward spiral. I think the Dolphins get some revenge here, beat the Titans in week 4, start off 4-0, the hottest start that we have so far in our predictions. Week 5 in Foxborough against the Patriots, the Dolphins continue rolling. They hit their week 6 bye at 5-0. Everything is going great for the Dolphins. Tua is playing great. The offensive line is holding up, but they haven't really played too many contenders. We talked about how I'm not a huge believer in the Bills this season. They get maybe their toughest test of the whole season coming off the bye week, and I think coming off the bye week really does help here. They get the Colts, and again, the Colts. Calling the Colts the biggest test of the season so far kind of tells you what kind of schedule that they've had so far. Not super tough. I think they take care of business against the Colts. Again, I really like this Colts team, but I find myself continuing to give them losses here as we're doing predictions this whole season. The Colts are going to lose this game. The Dolphins improve to 6-0 on the season. Then they host the Cardinals. The Cardinals, again, not the toughest team. I'm giving the Dolphins a win here. After week 8, they're 7-0, the last undefeated team remaining in the NFL. They're still going. The Bills in week 9. That is up in Buffalo. It's not too late in the season. I think that the Dolphins are going to take care of business here. They're up to 8-0. Don't look now. 8 wins already. They haven't lost a game. Can they join the Dolphins? Can they be the second undefeated team? The only other team was those 72 Dolphins. Can they keep this up? Week 10 against the Rams. Matthew Stafford all the way out in LA. I think the Dolphins get this done as well. They've made it through all of the former playoff teams. The Bills twice and the Rams here through the first 10 weeks of the season. Then they get 2 more teams before it really starts to get tough. Like I said, those last 7 weeks of the season are going to be brutal for them. Week 11 against the Raiders, take care of business. They're gonna handle Vegas there as Vegas comes down to Miami. They're 10-0 now. Then they get the Patriots, and they're starting to sweat a little bit. You know, coming up after the Patriots, you have the death schedule. And I tell you, people have been talking a lot this offseason about how tough the Steelers schedule is down the stretch. It's nothing compared to this Dolphins schedule. This Dolphins schedule down the stretch, we'll get to it once we get through this Patriots game, but it's ridiculously hard. And I think that the Patriots have a tendency to win down in Miami. So I'm going to give the Patriots a win here, ending the dreams of an undefeated season for the Dolphins. But they start off 10-0. 10-1 is a great place to be heading into week 13. And I just want to read out the rest of this schedule for you guys. Week 13 at the Packers in Green Bay. Week 14 hosts the Jets. Week 15 at the Texans in Houston. Week 16, hosting the 49ers. Week 17, up in Cleveland, taking on the Browns. And closing out the season, Week 18 in New York against the Jets. That is brutal. That is incredibly tough. Not an easy stretch of schedule. Lucky for them, they're 10-1. They've all but clinched a playoff spot here. It's not 100%, but 10 wins should get them in. Again, this is a tough AFC, but 10 wins should get it done. They start off against the Packers in Lambeau. I'm giving this win to the Dolphins. They rebound from a tough loss against division opponent, the Patriots, and they're feeling good. They start off that stretch good. They got 5 games left. They're 11-1. Running high on momentum, and then I think it comes crashing down. Game 1 against the Jets, that's a loss. In these last 5. Game 1 at home against the Jets, they're going to lose that one. Then they travel to Houston against the Texans, another loss. CJ Stroud takes down Tua and the Dolphins. Then they host the 49ers, the juggernaut that is the 49ers. You probably have a battle between these 2 guys that are fighting for the offensive player in the year in Tyreek Hill and Christian McCaffrey. The Dolphins lose to the 49ers here. Week 17 against the Browns. What's really going to hurt is that offensive line getting a lot worse when you have Myles Garrett coming off the edge against you. That is a loss. Close out the season against the Jets on the road, a game that the Jets need more than the Dolphins do, maybe even for the division here. I'm taking the Jets. The Dolphins, after starting so hot, 10 straight wins to begin the season, lose their last 5, kind of like they were limping into the playoffs. I do have them making the playoffs here at 11-6, but limping into it after what really is a super brutal schedule. I really am serious when I say that this is the most brutal end of the schedule that any team in the NFL has. I can't imagine it gets much harder. Maybe you throw the Chiefs in there, and that's the only way that it gets harder, but it's not an easy schedule by any stretch of the imagination. We'll see if they can rebound. It is going to be this is a good season. Like I said, I believe in the Dolphins. And I think this collapse down the stretch of the season is going to be more because of the matchups rather than their team. This is a team that's not going to beat the allegations of only being able to play against bad teams, unfortunately. And as much as I want to give them the benefit of the doubt here, I can't do it. That is such a tough schedule, and this Dolphins team isn't built to go 16-1. This Dolphins team isn't built to go 17-0. It's a really good team. The offense is great. The defense is really good, actually, but it's just not quite built to go the distance here. Maybe they can make some noise in the playoffs. It's a disappointing end to the season, but finishing 11-6, going over that 9.5 win total, I think is very achievable for this team. And also, I mean, I could see them winning anywhere from 10 to 12 games. I kind of packed the front of their schedule with a lot of wins. They could lose one in there, win one down the stretch, make it not look as collapsy. But this is a really, really tough end of the schedule for the Dolphins. And I'm not going to, and as if this plays out the way that I see it playing out, I don't blame them for, losing all these games down the stretch. It's just going to be a tough, tough battle. And it's especially having an early bye like that, having to go against all those teams, it's not going to be easy. But anyway, let me know what you think of the Dolphins schedule. I have them going 11-6. I gave them a C for their off-season grade. This is going to be a good team. It really is going to be a good team. But like I said, let me know what you think. Tomorrow, we're going to pick a new team. We're going to go over those Jets that are going to battle with the Dolphins for this division. We'll go over any other major story that's going on in the world of sports. Thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in to today's episode of Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place, for everything, for anything going on in the world of sports. Thank you for tuning in. I will see you then. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Let's go.